This is the Capitol Rundown.
We can improve our environment, but while not shackling the U.S. economy.
That was a far cry more than what VP Harris had done.
Kind of surprised me to have something that I was doing and had my name on getting protested.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepper. Let's get you caught up on the political week that was. And we are starting in mid-Michigan, where a disturbing protest was held on November 9th outside of a local theater production of The Diary of Anne Frank. And some fear it's another sign of creeping fascism in the United States. The Rundown's Taryn Simmons has more.
It was upsetting, just knowing the character that I was playing, knowing a lot of the research that I did on my character.
It kind of surprised me to have something that I was doing and had my name on getting protested.
Members of the Fowlerville Community Theater were shocked to hear the Jewish play they've been performing for 2 weeks was being protested by people holding swastika flags. Laura Goldthwaite, commander at the American Legion where the play took place, says she believes the group was there to intimidate people, something the Legion doesn't stand for.
I'm at a loss, honestly, both personally and as an organization.
Witnesses say after the group left Howell, they went to downtown Fowlerville. These witnesses say the men had their faces covered with masks that read 1488, a symbol of white supremacy.
There was a group of people at the four-way intersection in downtown that had swastika flags, American flags. They were sticking their arms up, yelling "Hail Hitler" and "Hail Trump" and everything like that.
They looked at me and one of them said, "No, this is Pureville now, and we're here to make sure it stays pure."
Peter Damrose says when he confronted the group, they told him to go back to his country. He says he believes the group did this due to the current political climate.
I really felt that they felt comfortable enough to do this because of Trump's re-election, and what they said to me at the stoplight made that quite clear.
Reactions condemning the display of white supremacy came from the local community and from state leaders in Lansing. Livingston County Sheriff Mike Murphy said while no crime was committed, the people waving Nazi flags should unmask themselves. He compared the small demonstration to another Nazi gathering in Howell that happened back in the 1990s.
And there was about 6 people that showed up. That was one of the proudest days ever for me in this county because the community stayed away. They didn't get the rise. They were supposed to be there for like 4 hours or something like that. They were literally there for about a half an hour. They packed up and they left. That's exactly what we need to do with these knuckleheads.
When asked about what happened at the Diary of Anne Frank production last weekend, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer had this to say.
I think that some of the rhetoric that we're already seeing is really corrosive and very concerning, and as you see rallies like this and how the local community was really shocked by it, just tells you that we are wading into some, concerning territory. But, hate speech and demonstrations to scare and intimidate fellow Americans is not something I take lightly.
And this comes after a White Lives Matter demonstration in August in downtown Howell. Mayor Bob Ellis and Republican State Representative-elect Jason Wolford rejected the message of hateful demonstrations. Coming up, our Washington correspondent will take a look at how the Trump transition is going, especially after its latest picks for the new cabinet. But first, a report on the Michigan House of Representatives and its lame duck session as control changes hands. The Capitol Rundown will be right back. Welcome back. Democrats took control of both chambers of the state legislature 2 years ago, but voters in this month's election are returning control of the House to Republicans. Our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic is here with a look at what Democrats want to do before the changeover and what will happen after.
The legislative laundry list of lame duck issues includes fixing the new minimum wage law so that hospitality workers can keep the bulk of their tip income. Governor Whitmer, for her part, wants to pony up some state tax credits for a semiconductor factory near Flint that would supply EV parts. However, House Republicans are blocking, and a newly elected township board has pledged to kill the project. There is also mumbling about the state helping General Motors dismantle the Ren Center in Detroit. But some from both sides of the aisle have argued, why should we help a giant corporation with a decision that it made? The governor and Democrats are still putting the finishing touches on their lame duck docket, including a chat with the incoming new House Republican Speaker Matt Hall, the governor says.
I continue to have an open dialogue with the leaders of all four caucuses. I have conversed with Matt Hall and congratulated him, and I look forward to hoping we can find out some common ground.
Progressive Democrats could make a run at adopting many items on their agenda and that Republicans will strongly oppose. Representative Bill Schuette is part of Speaker Hall's incoming team, and he's commenting on what the R's will do if the Democrats throw the kitchen sink at them on their way out the door during lame duck.
What I would hope is that Michigan Democrats would look at these election results and realize that this is an opportunity not to throw bombs or kitchen sinks, but rather to get down to the issues that are facing Michigan. You have to be ready for everything.
Meanwhile, Democratic Speaker Joe Tate will not be Speaker next year, and this man will become the Democratic minority leader. He wants to work with both sides.
I have a long track record of working across the aisle. I want to be a voice for pragmatic legislation that, again, continues to meet the needs of Michiganders all across the state. As leader, I hope to work well with the other side of the aisle.
The question, of course, is can they find common ground on anything before the end of the year and the Democrats lose control?
Thank you, Tim. Coming up, President-elect Trump did well among voters in a key Michigan community, and we are looking at why. But first, not all of the next president's choices for his cabinet are meeting with approval from Senate Republicans. Keep it here. The transition to another Donald Trump presidency has been a mostly smooth one for the Republican until one of his latest cabinet nominations. President-elect Trump created a political earthquake in D.C. by nominating Florida Republican Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Our Washington correspondent Jesse Tenor breaks down the response.
Democrats have been sounding the alarm, worried that Gaetz will essentially let President-elect Trump do whatever he wants. Now, Republicans aren't necessarily going that far, but many are concerned about his nomination.
Matt was a surprise.
I asked the question if this was a serious nominee.
I just think it's silly.
The prospect of an Attorney General Matt Gaetz is not sitting well with fellow Republicans, including North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer.
He's certainly not a consensus pick, which means a lot of political capital would have to be spent to get him across the finish line.
President-elect Donald Trump wants Gaetz to lead the Justice Department, the same agency that was criminally investigating Gaetz for child sex trafficking. The DOJ ultimately did not bring charges against him, and Gaetz has denied the allegations. The Ethics Committee in Congress was about to vote on releasing its own investigation into Gaetz Friday.
Effective immediately.
But he resigned from his House seat Wednesday as soon as President-elect Trump announced his appointment.
Let me tell you why I think he will have enough support, because the American people support change.
Senators would have to confirm the Attorney General position, and Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty says he supports Gaetz.
No one has been better at channeling the frustration of the American public against the DOJ than Matt Gaetz.
Lawmakers say regardless, this will be an early test for incoming Senate Republican leader John Thune.
I will work every day here in the Senate to serve my colleagues and to advance President Trump's agenda.
And speaking of nominations, President-elect Trump has made it officially official that he wants to see RFK Jr. lead the Department of Health and Human Services. In Washington, I'm Jesse Tenor.
In Dearborn, Michigan, where nearly half of the 110,000 residents are of Arab descent, Vice President Kamala Harris received more than 2,500 fewer votes than Donald Trump. The VP also lost neighboring Dearborn Heights to Mr. Trump, who in his previous term as president banned travel from several mostly Muslim countries. Vice President Harris lost the presidential vote in the two cities after months of warnings from local Democratic leaders there. They were critical of the Biden-Harris administration's unwavering support for Israel in the war in Gaza. Some said they backed now President-elect Trump after he visited a few days before the election and reassured people that he would find a way to end violence in the Middle East.
That was a far cry more than what VP Harris had done. While she so arrogantly stood on stage and silenced protesters.
During an August rally in Romulus, the vice president was interrupted by pro-Gaza protesters and had this response.
You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win,
then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
It put our community into a position where we would now be the ones speaking, and she would have to listen.
While VP Harris softened her rhetoric on the war during her campaign, she did not propose policies toward Israel or the war in Gaza that were different than President Joe Biden. The administration has remained a staunch ally of Israel since the October 2023 attack by Hamas, which killed 1,200 Israelis and took more than 200 hostages. Palestinian health officials say the war has killed more than 43,000 people in Gaza.
Our top priority was for her to lose Michigan, more importantly, to lose in Dearborn. We spoke loud and clear. Don't take us for granted. Don't take our support for granted. Our blood is not cheap. Muslim and Arab lives do matter, whether it's here or in the Middle East.
Well, coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, Tim Skubic will be here for Tim's Take and the latest in Michigan politics. But first, Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are setting their sights on EV standards. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Congressional Republicans and President-elect Trump are taking a hard look at electric vehicle standards across the country. Rolling them back would be felt across the auto industry. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson has more.
A key piece of President Biden's legacy is on the chopping block.
And I think that's what President Trump is going to bring, is a good dose of common sense to improvements in environmental standards.
New York Congressman Nick Langworthy says many of President Biden's climate goals, like stricter tailpipe emissions and the push toward electric vehicles, need to be reevaluated.
We can improve our environment, but while not shackling the U.S. economy.
West Virginia Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito wants to repeal the parts of the Inflation Reduction Act that deal with climate change.
A lot of what they have in there is spending on green bank and environmental justice.
Now that Republicans control Congress, Capito believes they can make major changes to President Biden's environmental policies,
clawing back some of the regulatory areas that we've seen the Biden administration overreach.
And Tennessee Republican Senator Bill Hagerty says Trump supports the technologies.
He's just against an overreaching bureaucracy that tries to dictate the behavior and control Americans.
But Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons says the U.S. must increase electric vehicle manufacturing.
I think there is a clean energy transition underway worldwide. The Chinese are currently the dominant global manufacturer of electric vehicles.
Coons says he remains optimistic Congress will work in a bipartisan way to keep car climate goals. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Donald Trump's win here in Michigan came down to some key demographics. The Rundown's Jorma Duran talked to our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic about that and more.
It's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubic, to help us out. Tim, Michigan is sometimes called a blue wall state, but turned red for Donald Trump. So what are you hearing from voters and politicians on why he performed so well in the past election?
Well, actually, Jorma, that wall is now black and blue. If you talk to the Democrats, look at this isn't the way it was supposed to go. Remember, the Ds were pinning all of their hopes on the female vote, turning out in huge numbers to overwhelm the Donald Trump numbers. Well, it just never happened. And what did happen is that Donald Trump defied the experts. The experts say that in order to win elections, you need to hold your base, that is, the people that are with you regardless of whatever happens. But you've got to go to the middle of the political spectrum. You got to get the independent voters. Mr. Trump said, "Pooey on that. I've got a different strategy. I'm going to go out and find Republican men who really rarely get off the couch and vote, and I'm going to get them off the couch and get them to the polls." And you know what? He did exactly that. He actually overperformed. If you take 216 of where he started in Michigan, he grew that base the next time he ran and lost to Joe Biden, and this time he expanded it even more. She, on the other hand, Ms. Harris, underperformed. She didn't do as well as Joe Biden did 4 years ago with women, with younger voters, and with Democrats, and in Detroit. So you add it all up, failures on her part to deliver the vote, an excellent exposure of Donald Trump and an over number of people who voted for him, and you got to win, which was impressive to say the least.
Well, Tim, looking at Michigan's history when it comes to the governor's chair, voters don't tend to stay with one party for very long. Why is that? And what does your crystal ball tell you about the governor's race in 2026?
Yeah, those are great questions. All right, here's what the pattern has been, going back all the way to the days of William Milliken, which are back in the 70s. One party gets power, the next party comes in, and they ping-pong back and forth. So if you project that to the year 2026, which is the next governor's race, theoretically, if this curse prevails, the Democrats might be in trouble trying to hold on to the governor's seat since Governor Whitmer can't run. The Republicans see this as an opportunity, but the X factor, and this is just an amazing thing how much Donald Trump has an influence on Michigan elections. Depending on how well he performs over the next 2 years, Mr. Trump could be a plus for a Republican running for governor, or he could be a minus for the Republican running for governor, and therefore sort of through the back door influence who might be the next governor in Michigan. We'll see if the curse holds, Jarma.
Well, coming up, the governor of Michigan just issued a pardon to a very lucky jailbird. We'll take you to the Capitol to see the turkey pardoning ceremony held earlier this week. Stay tuned. Well, there's one less bird that will be on a table this Thanksgiving, thanks to a pardon from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. On Thursday, the governor pardoned Aiden Cluckinson, and that was the winning entry in the state's contest to name the lucky turkey. If you think you've heard that name before, you might be thinking of Detroit Lion Aiden Hutchinson. This year's winning entry came from a young Michigander from South Lyon named Valentina.
Thanks again for being here. Let's make this official by the power vested in me. I don't know if it's really in the Michigan Constitution, but that's what it says here. By the Michigan Constitution, I hereby pardon Aiden Cluckinson. We release you to the custody of the Saginaw Children's Zoo.
Aiden Cluckinson is the third turkey pardoned in Michigan. Last year it was Dolly Pardon. She received one, and the year before that it went to Mitch E. Gander. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. We will see you all right here again next week.